So this was an interesting piece to work on because, well, I've never really drawn a mushroom person before. The Olu are a myconidal race. Is myconidal a word? I don't know. But myconid essentially means a mushroom or fungal. And the Olu are based on the fungal kingdom. So when I originally drew it, I had in mind like an elf that was smooth and had like bits of the fungal pieces coming off the shoulders and the neck. I didn't want him to look too human. Like I really was trying to avoid the look of like just a guy in a cosplay outfit. But it's like, how do you really do that? And to some degree, I mean, cosplayers are awesome. So yeah, to some degree, you really can't avoid that look if you're gonna keep a humanoid shape. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. And that's kind of what I realized in designing this. At first I tried to make him excessively skinny, but I was like, eh. And then, well, first of all, let me say that this is based off a reference. Like a lot of the characters in Exodus are based off people are designed from or around, like, not designed from, but are just inspired by, like, people that I know. And so as a result, this one in particular was created by a friend of mine, and the references he gave me really helped me get that shape for a coat, a hood, like that smooth, almost Assassin's Creed-ish kind of style, but not quite. But you know the look of like Ezio, and you can kind of see traces of that in this reference, or at least the contours of it. But the Olu have very distinctive places where they grow their fungal parts. Anywhere we grow hair is where an Olu will grow their fungal bits. And so that jacket on his back actually is growing out of his spine, and his shoulder pieces, that's really his shoulder, that grew from his shoulder. But I realized, and this was actually thanks to my brother, when I showed it to him, he told me that there's like the side piece looked like he had feathers rather than like mushroom bits. So I was like, okay, let me try to redo that. And he said that, you know, the mushroom cap on the other side didn't quite look like that. So over time, I started focusing more on texture. And I looked at a lot of different references for mushroom texture. And for artists out there who are up and coming, texture is a big thing that's easy to ignore when you're first starting out, because it feels like this crazy, daunting, like, how do I make skin look like skin, or scales look like scales, or in this case, how do I make a mushroom look like a mushroom, besides just drawing the shape? It turns out it's really not that hard, you know. A couple dots in the right place, a little like faded out circles can really go a long way. Also, a big factor of texture is just kind of varying the shade that you're using. Like we all draw in black, and in this one you can see I use like mostly black quote unquote ink. But you know, mixing in grays in there really doesn't hurt. As for the color, I knew I wanted to go with these are quote unquote dark elves, so I was gonna go with generally dark themes. And the dark blue, purples, reds, they all came naturally. The green though was because the person who this is from like referenced like him having like green, like there's a certain fungi, a mushroom that grows that looks like the moss on this character's elbows and hair. And so when I looked at it, I used that particular green for all the glowing parts, the bioluminescence on his body. As for the skin, it's funny because, like, if you look at certain shows, like, well, use Dragon Ball for example, like Piccolo or Cell, like these guys are aliens, but they kind of look like people, but you could tell they're still clearly aliens. And that's because like the ears are different, the eyes may be a little bit different, like just even though they have the humanoid shape, there are just certain little differences, especially when it comes to the skin. So for the olu, I started adding more dots, more like splotchy parts to the skin. And that really started to make a difference, like a big difference. The colors, after adding the purple, and if you follow color theory, there's like a color wheel, and the easiest way of following the color wheel and having colors that blend is by kind of staying in that same range. So like that purple kind of blends easily into the red, which blends, or rather red easily blends into purple, which easily blends into blue. And if you're clever, or rather if you just have a decent eye, you can make that work in any kind of way. But green is something totally off the wall different, and I really wasn't sure if that was going to work. But the other thing with color theory is like contrast. The reds and blacks and purples are all kind of dark, and the greens are a lot brighter. And as a result, they don't really clash with each other. And you'll see me darken the background right here because every artist better than myself told me it's better to work with a dark background. And this is why, actually. You can see way more detail here than you could with the white background. And the white background kind of makes it harder to determine like light and see light. So when it comes to digital art especially, it's better to work with a more grayer canvas so you can more clearly see the distinctions between light and shadow. From here, I started to go into the portrait. I spent about a year and a half focusing almost entirely on portraits, drawing people on the train and all that, just so I can get my faces and facial detail a little bit better. And I still kind of have a problem with faces coming out looking a little samey, but I don't know, it's a process. Art is a lifelong process. They say learning art is learning to see, and I feel like this picture kind of really depicts that. I had to learn to see what make details, learn to see like, light and shadow and how to convey it properly. It's really just taking the same thing and just adding a bit more detail here and there, being consistent and patient. And I'm starting to see that patience and consistency really pay off in my work. And I'm very thankful for that. I've never really done one of these before, talking about my art, so I really hope you enjoyed. I enjoy doing it, and I hope you have a good night.